Okay, we're going to work on a lesson in the trig ratios, and we're going to answer the question, what do you mean by sine, cosine, and tangent ratio from chapter 7 in your book. Okay, it says write and calculate the sine, cosine, and tangent ratios. A ratio is a quantity in relation to another quantity. And so when we talk about the sine, cosine, and tangent ratios, we're talking about in terms of one of the angles, what is the ratio of particular sides in a triangle. Okay, so the sine ratio, the sine of B, remember in SOHCAHTOA, okay, the sine ratio is the ratio between the opposite side over the hypotenuse. So let's take a minute to talk about which side is which. Okay, it depends on which angle you're looking at. Since we're looking from angle B, the opposite side is directly across from the angle, and it does not touch the angle like the adjacent sides do. The adjacent sides are the ones that touch the angle. So CB and AB are adjacent sides to B. But when we talk about the adjacent side, it is always the leg that is connected to B, because the hypotenuse is never going to be called the adjacent side. It will always be the hypotenuse. Okay, so to answer these questions, to find the ratios, the sine of B, and it says to write them and then calculate them. The sine of B is the opposite side, 7, over the hypotenuse. Now the hypotenuse is directly across from the right angle. If you remember our Tarzan man, we remember that his legs, this is kind of like his little loincloth. Okay, his legs come from that, and the hypotenuse is not a leg, so the hypotenuse is 25. So 7 over 25, and then it says calculate it. To calculate it, use your calculator and just take the fraction that you have and divide it. 7 divided by 25 equals 0.28. Okay, normally we take these ratios out to the 4th decimal place, but in this case we only have 2, so we can put 0.28 or 0.2800. Okay, cosine in SOHCAHTOA is adjacent side over hypotenuse. So we would write cosine B, and here's B, and we use the side that's touching B, which is 24, over the side, the hypotenuse, which is 25, and then again with your calculator, calculate 24 divided by 25. And that would be your ratio, 0.96. Okay, now if we're going to calculate the tangent of B, that would be SOHCAHTOA. That's opposite over adjacent. So we're going to use the opposite side, 7, over the adjacent side, 24. And 7 divided by 24 is, now we have more than 4 digits, 0.29166. Okay, we're only supposed to go to the 4th decimal place. So we're going to look at the very next number to determine what to do with that 6. And we need to make it a 7 because it's above our halfway point. .2917. Okay, the ratios change when you're looking from the perspective of another angle. So now if we're looking at angle A, sine is the opposite side, 24, over the hypotenuse, 25, which is 0.96. Now you might notice that that's the same as the cosine. It's the very same numbers as the cosine, because B, this is sine A. Cosine of B is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, so it's 24 over 25. So you're going to find that some of these ratios are the same, they're called by different trig functions names, but from another perspective the cosine is equal to the sine of the other angle. So the tangent of A is adjacent, TOA is opposite over adjacent side, so it's 24 over, what is that side, 7. And so it can be a number greater than 1. 24 divided by 7 is 3.428, and then the next number is a 7. That means your 5 is going to bump up to a 6, and then that 7 will disappear. So it's 3.4286. Notice I have 4 decimal places. That's not 4 numbers, that's 4 numbers beyond the decimal point. Okay, and then the cosine of A. Cosine of A is the adjacent side, adjacent over hypotenuse. The adjacent side to A is 7 over the hypotenuse, which is 25. 7 divided by 25 is 0.28, which is, by the way, the sine of B. Okay, let's look at another one and just kind of solidify this. The sine of A is 35 over 37, which is also equal to the cosine of B, the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. The cosine of B is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, 35, oops, I meant to say cosine of, I wanted to do the cosine of A because we just did the cosine of B. Okay, the cosine of A is equal to the adjacent side, which is 12 over 37, which, by the way, is the same thing as the sine of B, opposite side over hypotenuse. Tangent of A is opposite over adjacent, TOA, that's 35 over 12. And I'm not dividing these out, you can do that. And the tangent of B is going to be the reciprocal, which is 12 over 35. And those are all of your ratios. It's a comparison of the two sides, and it can be written as a decimal by dividing that fraction.